Door adjustment and spring tension are critical to proper door operation. Springs can fail with extended use. It is important that the overhead door not be operated with a broken spring. Here are the tools you'll need for installing or rewinding a new spring. Safety glasses, winding bars, which are 2 steel bars 1/2 inch in diameter and 14 to 18 inches long, a 1/2 inch wrench, pliers, a pair of vice grips, a work lamp, a stepladder, and 2 equal-size wood blocks 2x4 to keep the door from pinching your lamp cord. Unlock and raise the door. Place the equal-size wooden blocks on the threshold. Go inside with your tools and work lamp and lower the door onto your wooden blocks. This is important. Never wind your spring while the door is in the up position. This could cause the spring to kink or snake like this. A recommended method for correcting a kinked spring will be shown at the end of this section. If you're installing a new spring or rewinding a spring, you'll need to start from scratch. First, make sure both cable drums are loose on the counterbalance shaft. Wind one of the cables on its drum, maintaining cable tension. Press the drum against the counterbalance shaft bearing and tighten the set screws. Place the vice grips on the counterbalance shaft with the handles against the ceiling to maintain tension on the cable. Repeat the winding and tightening procedure on the other cables so that both cables are under equal tension and the cable drums are fitted against the bearings. Now, draw a chalk line the length of the new spring to be wound. This is required for counting the number of turns applied to the counterbalance spring. To establish the number of turns required, measure the opening height of the door in inches. The opening height is the distance from the threshold or sill to the bottom of the header. Divide the opening height in inches by the number 10. Add 3 to this number, and you have determined the approximate number of turns to put on the spring. To give you an example, if the opening height of a door is 80 inches, you would do the following simple calculation. Divide 80 by 10, and you get 8. Add 3 to 8, and you arrive at 11 turns to put on the spring. In this case, 11 is the number to be used as a starting point in determining the correct balance. A slight adjustment might have to be made to achieve the desired tension. Begin by placing the first bar in the counterbalance spring winding plug. Press it upward towards the ceiling. Wind the spring by alternating the bars until the proper number of turns is reached. To count the number of turns, simply watch the chalk line you've drawn on the counterbalance spring. You can count the number of turns on the spring by counting the wound portion of the chalk line. For example, 3 turns of the spring would look like this on the chalk line. 7 turns would look like this. And 11 turns, the number of turns we've calculated to be right for the 80-inch door, would look like this. When you've reached the correct number of turns, hold the winding bar firmly with one hand and tighten both set screws on the winding plug. Remove the vice grips on the counterbalance shaft, and the procedure is complete. Please note, the cable drums must be set snugly against the bearing like this. Now, check to determine if your door is in balance. Open the door a few feet. When stopped, the door is properly balanced if it remains at this location. If the door drifts back downward or starts to close, add tension by continuing to wind the spring. If the door drifts upward or continues to open on its own, the spring has too much tension. Decrease tension by reversing the winding procedure. Also note that all of the installation and winding guidelines hold true for a shallow header counterbalance assembly as well. Built to fit into the small space of a shallow header, the assembly operates to the reverse of the regular assembly. For example, the cable drum is still snug against the bearing, but the cable feeds off the opposite side of the drum. Also, there are 2 extra holes in the winding plug here for winding bars, and the spring winds in the opposite direction. Note, for the shallow header, the cable drum marked right is used on the opposite or passenger side, and the left cable drum is used for the driver's side. An important note: because of the tension exerted from the counterbalance spring, make certain the counterbalance anchor bracket is properly welded to the header. An improperly wound spring that appears twisted or bunched is commonly referred to as a snaked spring. This may cause the spring to fatigue prematurely, so it would need to be fixed immediately. Begin by closing the door and locking it. If you're not working with another mechanic, place a sign on the outside of the door advising of door repair in progress. Place vice grips on the counterbalance shaft next to the cable drum with the handles against the ceiling to maintain tension on the cable drums. Insert a winding bar into the counterbalance spring winding plug. Hold the bar firmly and loosen both set screws in the spring winding plug. The spring will move toward the spring anchor bracket to its proper relaxed position. Important: do not remove the winding bar until the set screws are tightened first, like this.